Cool.
We got it.
Awesome. I'm going to hop to the other sessions and I'm giving all the presenters a reminder. So
sounds great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And on that note, everyone who is joining in, thank you so much for putting your names and organizations in the chat. If you're just getting in, if you would go ahead and do that for me, that's just so that I can also give Chris that list in addition to our recorded session. We are going to get started right on time because I want to be very conscientious of your time and your schedule. So we are at 3:09. I would like to just do a quick tech check. So if anyone who wants to could give me a thumbs up or let me know that you can hear me okay and you can see the shared presentation screen. Awesome. Thank you so much. Love the thumbs up. For those of you who've been logged on for a few minutes, I hope you grabbed a snack or a drink. I know you've been online for a little while, and so I hope you're making it enjoyable for yourself in the comfort of your home. It is officially 3:10, so we are going to get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kelly Carpenter. I serve as the Assistant Director for Campus Programming in the Office of Student Activities. And so what I'm going to be presenting for you all is Event Planning 101. Now, obviously, our office, the Office of Student Activities, does a great deal of event planning here on campus. We are also a resource for you, but specifically, just so you know that I have a little bit of knowledge and know what I'm talking about, I wanted to let you know that I've been working in higher education and student affairs for over 15 years. I've worked heavily with student organizations, planning events, and running their organizations. So the information that I'm sharing with you comes from a collection of those years of best practices, working with all types of student organizations, really, really small organizations to very large leadership societies to Greek organizations. And so I can see we have a great variety of organizations that are represented today. Welcome, everyone. I hope you find this really relevant information. It is being recorded for those of you who just hopped in. So take notes, but also I know that it'll be provided for you to view again at a later time. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. Very exciting stuff. Okay, so Event Planning 101. The very first thing that needs to happen is the development of your event goals. Oops, sorry. I was trying to move myself out of the way and ended up clicking that instead. Zoom. Okay, so developing your event goals. So what you want to do is really be very intentional with how you are using your resources and your time. And when it comes to hosting an event or a program on campus, you really want to be thoughtful from the start. And so there's 4 different ways for you to develop your event goals. First of all, define the specific purpose of the event. What exactly is it that you're trying to do? Are you fundraising? Are you building awareness of your existence? Are you building community within campus, within just your organization, within the larger community, the area? But what is it that you're trying to do? Then from there, you want to talk about why is it the purpose of your group? How does it connect to what you're doing? So you're asking yourself, why us and why now? Does this make sense for the student organization that I am a part of to be doing this event? You want to get to the root of, again, what is the goal? What are we working on? Once you know what it is and why it's you and why now, you then want to go into what do you want your attendees, the people showing up to your event, to receive for coming? So in other words, answering to them, what's in it for me? If you were going to tell any of your friends or any of your peers or any of your family members to come to your event, answering the question for them of, well, why? What's in it for me? And then take it one step further and really think about how will the members of your organization who are helping to run the event benefit? Again, what's in it for me or what's in it for them? How is it going to help us as an organization to host this event? When you've defined those 4 things, what you've really put together is a very clear and concise event goal. You know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it, and you know what the benefit is for everyone who's involved. Once you have those goals, you want to review them often. And as we move through these processes, you want to keep coming back to them. So every time you have to make a big decision, come back to the event goals. Does that decision help the event goal? Or does it have nothing to do with it? And it's just something that we want to do. Make smart decisions that way. Also in the chat, just had a question, just wanted to answer the question. Yes, you will have access to the recording. And so again, sit back, relax. I'm going to talk fast because there's a lot of content to get through. You'll be able to just watch again and receive the recording later on. Chris will send it out to you all. Thank you for asking that question. So one of the biggest things that I see students struggle with when they're trying to plan events is figuring out the timeline. And it's not just students. We'll be very honest. Our department sometimes struggles with this. We don't get started early enough, and then we run out of time. So developing your planning timeline, once you know what your event is, why you're doing it, and what the benefit is, once you have those goals established, you've got to get to work. So there's some things at the top to remember. The larger the event is, the more time you need to plan it. There has to be some method of staying organized. It needs to be a method that works for you. What works for me are lists. What works for some people are task apps that can be shared or putting things into a Google Drive. It needs to be a way that is successful for everyone who is helping. So that's something to have discussion with your community, with your group. How are we going to organize our information? And then make sure that you use it. You need to consider your requirements of the university. So reservation deadlines. You cannot reserve an event less than 72 hours out. And so obviously you need to think about that planning timeline, make sure you have space, plenty of time out in advance. One of the biggest things is remembering your own capacity, not only your personal capacity, but the organization's capacity and every student that's working alongside you. You all are students. You have other things going on that are equally, if sometimes not more important. And so you want to reasonably be able to do all the work that you need to do and achieve it in each week without it becoming a major stressor. Tons of drama can come from student organizations who rush through event planning. It becomes stressful, people's feelings get hurt, and it just blows up in your faces. Really thinking about giving yourself plenty of time to do all the work necessary to plan a successful event can eliminate a lot of that drama. And then you also want to remember all of your available resources for detailed help. There are pages on towson.edu that are from ECS under facility reservations that have a ton of resources. And then there's also links on Involved at TU. And our office can provide you in-person coaching. So if it's the first time that you're taking on anything like this, if you're a first-time event programmer, or if your organization has maybe struggled in the past with planning your events, reach out to us and we'd be happy to sit down and coach you through some of it. Now, one of the things that I want to teach you is backwards design. So specifically talking about how to plan your timeline. This is a tactic that many people take. It's going to sound and feel a little bit funky when I describe it to you, but I promise you that if you work in this way, it does work out really well. So first of all, just like I said, you're going to start with your event goals because you need to know what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. So, okay, we've got our event goals. Then we're going to sit down and we're just going to make a list. You can do this just with, let's say, the executive board or the one or two chairs of the event, or you can do it with the whole committee if you want. But consider all the decisions, the deadlines, the tasks that have to be accomplished, and everything that's going to take into the event. Just make a giant list, working backwards from the day of the event and so forth. So you really want to think about, okay, the day of, we would have to do this. The week of, we would have to get this done. The week before, we would have to get all of this done. And then you keep going backwards in terms of your weeks, remembering your capacity, remembering your workload and how much you can fit into each week. Once you've done that, what you're going to have is a list that's broken up into weeks of how much work has to be done. At that point, you count the weeks and you figure out how long you need to properly plan your event. Once you have that length of time, that's when you set your timeline accordingly and you select your event date. You don't select the date first because you don't know how much time it's going to take you to actually get everything done. So you do all this work of organizing all the things that have to happen, and then you pick the event date. I also recommend adding an extra week because having a buffer of an extra week in order for planning, hiccups to happen, as they sometimes do, is always really helpful. It lessens the stress and anxiety. So what you might think is, oh, we want to have this event in February, and you're thinking about it right now. Sit down and think about all of the work that has to be done. Do you have enough weeks to get it all done? You may want to push that event into March if you don't have enough time. And again, it feels a little funky to talk about it and to kind of describe it, but it really is thinking backwards. So thinking of the work first and then setting the date for the event itself. So the third step comes into the committee. I highly recommend having an event committee within your organization. Now, some of your organizations are very structured. You have positions in place that are going to be responsible for these types of things. I noticed that we have some of our performance-based organizations. Hello to our dance teams that I saw. And so you're used to putting on events. It's a major component of your organization. But some of our organizations may not necessarily always put on events. And so having people who don't have a specific title sitting on a committee is always really helpful because, again, there's capacity limits. You need to make sure that there's plenty of people helping to get the work done. However, having a committee can also come with some difficulties too, right? So here are some best practices when it comes to managing a committee. Again, using a strong timeline. So we just talked about one way to create that timeline to ensure that you have enough people doing all of the work that has to get done. Consider assigning specific roles. So giving someone a specific area that they are responsible for entirely, like all of the finances, all of the logistics, all of the marketing. People love titles, and so it definitely helps if you allow them to have a title related to the committee, and it also helps for your resume. When you are transferring your experience in a student organization onto that resume, being able to put a title in there and some dates aligned with it will really help with your formatting. When you are delegating with tasks, I highly recommend that you allow for choice. And what that means is that you have a list of tasks that are out there and you say, okay, this is what has to be done. Does anyone have a preference for what they would like to take on? Allowing for choice gives you the opportunity to let people connect to skills that they already have, resources that they have, or just desires of how they'd like to spend their time. When you do assign tasks, they should always be specific and have a deadline. If you don't have a deadline, then they will not get done because they'll get procrastinated. You want to have the group agree upon a communication method. I mentioned that earlier. The organization methods and the communication methods need to be determined by the group. They need to be communicated also that, like, hey, we're all using GroupMe. Specifically, we're going to make a new group to talk about just this event so that it can all be in one place. And then that organization piece comes into that. When it comes to decisions, my advice and best practices are that major decisions are made by the committee, not individually. But then minor decisions are made individually. What that does is it allows the entire committee to buy in to the big picture. And then the small decisions allow for autonomy in each of the positions that you've created. You also want to normalize asking for help early in the process. You want to make sure people know that it's okay to come forward and say, hey, I'm struggling, or that it's okay to say they didn't get a task done by the deadline early enough that they can ask for help. When we start to make it a negative thing to say that we're struggling within a committee or within a group, that's when oftentimes people will try to hide their procrastination or their struggles and try to like make it all work. And then it gets tense and stressful and just simply doesn't get done or falls apart. And the last thing is you want to make it fun. No one wants to be part of a committee that's super stressful. People will just leave. And so figure out a way to make it fun, make sure people are feeling valued, make sure that you're spending a little bit of time just being slightly social, that it's not all business all the time, so that you can enjoy being together and working on this shared project. Okay, so our next step is budgeting. Again, I told you we were going to move really quick because there's a lot of information to get through. But again, just reiterating for everyone, you will be able to get a recording of this and have all of these slides. So for budgeting, your first step is to review, confirm, and total all of your available funds. So that's going to come from your organization dollars, what you have in your account, along with any sponsorships that you might be able to get or donations, and then collaborations too. If you're working with another organization that's going to, let's say, chip in for something. Once you have that total, this is our available funds for this event, subtract a buffer of 5%. Hold back 5% of your money. And that's going to help you to cover anything that's unexpected or emergency, something that pops up that we forgot about, oh my gosh, we have to pay for, or that ends up being slightly more expensive than you thought. Once you have that working budget, so you've got the available funds minus 5% equals your working budget, you're then going to gather quotes for every expense. Quotes are just that. You're just asking how much will it cost to do this. You're not signing any contracts or committing to any expenditures. You're just finding out how much is it going to cost. So think about things like shipping, any fees that are associated. I suggest putting it on a shared spreadsheet of some kind, again, in a Google Drive or in some shared resource, but don't make any purchases yet. You're then going to take that to the committee and you're going to do 4 things. You're going to prioritize your spending, meaning what's the most important for our event. You're then going to reduce or eliminate areas where it's more money than you have available. And then finally, you're going to approve everything as a committee. You want funds to be very transparent. There should never be a time when we're hiding how much we're spending on something, because that's inevitably going to create some sort of conflict within your group. And so you want the committee to approve that final budget. Now, within a budget, you could have a small amount for miscellaneous to say there's a few little things we haven't figured out yet, but it's, you know, things like purchasing tablecloths and some small decorations, but we're going to put $50 towards that. So you can build that in as well if there's anything that's still kind of flexible. Once the committee has approved the budget, then you move into making your purchases, placing your orders, completing your contracts. Just remember that you need to be super detailed and organized when it comes to spending your money. So keeping receipts, confirming order details, ensuring that the delivery is actually going to happen before your event. I can't tell you the number of times that Amazon packages show up after the event, and that's just not helpful because the money's already been spent. Once the event happens, you're then going to make sure that you record all of the expenses in detail, make sure all your bills have been paid, deposit any raised funds immediately into your account. And then the last step that a lot of times is forgotten, give a report back to the organization. So a final financial report back to the committee who can share with the organization, this is what we spent. If it's a fundraiser, this is how much we made or how much we profited, and this is the outcome. One final tip on it, don't be too overconfident about ticket sales covering your costs. Bills have to be paid even if your event is a total flop. And so you want to make sure that the attendance is not what you're counting on to pay those bills. You want to make sure you have the available money before you commit to spending it. That's definitely one of the learn the hard way lessons that a lot of student organizations have been through, is that they're, you know, counting on ticket sales and then it just doesn't come together, and that bill still has to be paid. All right, so our next one, I do see a few questions coming in. I'm going to get through a few more slides and then I'll answer those questions. So the next thing is risk management. So risk management basically means preparing ahead of time and being very detailed to help you avoid any unfortunate situations at your event. That could be anything from physical risk, and so making sure that people are safe, to also risk management when it comes to money or who's coming in and out of your event, making sure that the audience is safe. So there's a few things to consider here. First of all, there are location restrictions and campus policies that you need to make yourself aware of. There's a link in the slides, which you'll get these, but if you also just look up reservations on towson.edu, if you just type in reservations at the search bar, you'll get to the same page and you can open up all of the campus policies and really familiarize yourself with what the restrictions are. You want to consider check-in procedures and attendance tracking. How are you keeping track of who was at your event? And then one of the things that a lot of times gets lost in the mix is how will the rules of the event be communicated and enforced? So let's say we're playing a game and that game has rules, but how are we making sure that the people who walk up to join in our activity know what the rules are? Or if we're giving away food, but we only want people to take one piece of pizza each because that's all we budgeted for, how are we telling them that? And how are we telling them that in a way that means that they're not walking away from our event disgruntled, right? I do see a hand raised. If you want to go ahead and ask your question, you can.
Sure thing. This is Hunter. I'm with the Urban Farm at Towson. Real quick, I just had a question regarding, is there a necessity for events that are actually happening, is there a necessity to report attendance to some kind of higher power at Towson or anything like that? Is that something the university keeps track of?
So it
Or
is
is
not
it-
a requirement. It is something that could be helpful to your organization, and there's many tools available that we can help you with to do attendance tracking. For each organization, you might have different policies. So some organizations have participation requirements, and that's something to think about if an event that you're hosting includes a participation credit for your members. And that's when
Okay.
you would want to make sure that you have check-in procedures, but it is not a requirement of the university. Great question.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So again, then we're moving into more like space things. So are the activities in the space free of any safety concerns? So can anyone get cut or hurt, or can you safely participate in the activity without any sort of damage to the location, right? Then you want to think about money. So if you're taking in cash at your event, how are you taking it in? What are you doing with it to keep it safe, to make sure that A, it's not getting lost is what usually happens, or stolen, or just left behind even at the event. I've definitely seen student organizations walk away and forget the money bag. And so don't do that. But think about like who's working with the money, limit the number of people that are going to be touching money. That's always a good idea. But what are those cash handling plans? Then establish a chain of command and communication plan for during the event. So who's your main person? Who's your main host of the event that is going to be in charge should a in the moment decision have to be made? And then how would it be communicated out to the people who are helping? So what does that look like for your organization? Who is the person that if something happens off to the wings, you're going to make sure that they're the one that gets told that information? And then the last tip is to have an event kit on site with extra supplies, basic things, tape, blank paper, markers, etc. I was literally all day at an event at an education summit with faculty, and they forgot to make some signs, and no one had blank paper to literally write down signs. They wrote signs on Post-its and stuck them to doors, and no one could see them. So if anything, learn from our faculty friends that always have some extra supplies with you. It'll come in handy. At this point in your planning process, so you've gone through your goals, you've gone through your committee, you've got your budget, you're starting to work through all of your details. A fun thing that you can do, and it can be really fun, with your committee is play worst case scenario. So literally sit them down and ask them to think through the event, think through exactly what's happening at the event from the start, from check-in all the way to the conclusion of the event, and think through what are the worst things that could happen. And then how could we plan and prepare to make sure that it does not happen? It'll help you catch things that you just didn't think about or that you overlooked. And it's also, you can have a little bit of fun and be a little bit ridiculous with it, but then make sure that you're also being purposeful and using the ideas to prepare. So we do have a question asking, do you put your funds from potential fundraisers into your SGA account, even if you're a package one org and don't have a budget from them? So with that question, I'm actually going to defer you to our SGA representative and to Chris Rindosh. I do not work directly with the student organization fund, so I do not want to give you incorrect information. But if you want to follow up with either one of them, they can give you the direct answer for sure. Also looking at others. And yes, Hunter, it is kind of difficult to plan events on a farm. You are correct. All right, so we're going to move on to number 6. Number 6 is accessibility. With accessibility, what you're really asking yourself is, can every person who wants to and is included, meaning they're allowed to come to my event? So if my event is set to members only of my organization, or if it's set to all members of the campus, or if it's set to the entire open community to the public, can every person who is included and who wants to reasonably participate at every level of the event? So are you making sure that every little aspect of what you're doing is accessible to them to the best of your ability? And there's so many different things to consider. These are just a few of the things to think about. So if you're doing food, do you have the ability to provide some options that can hit dietary restrictions and needs? Or if not, can you at least communicate what the food options are going to be so people can prepare for themselves? If you're doing printed material, can you think about alternative formats, Braille, large print, for those who have vision difficulty, who might need something in a different way if it's visual? When we think about even language, can you think about an ASL or a language interpreter if it's a very large scale event and that might be a need? You want to think about physical activity alternatives. You want to think about how information is being relayed to your audience and make sure that you've hit a couple of different methods. And then again, some of the real basic things like physical space and layout accommodations. Are you laying out your event in such a way that it is accessible to everyone to get to every bit and piece of it? One of the great resources that we have on this campus is the Accessibility and Disability Services Office. They are now located right here in the Union. You can reach out to them for assistance and schedule a consultation. You do want to reach out with ample notice. Again, this goes back to your timeline, not only because you need time to put these things into action. You don't want to reach out to them the day before your event and then you have to scramble to make some changes based on their recommendations, but also because they are very busy and they have a lot of students to assist. So you want to make sure you reach out, request a meeting for a consultation, and then you can talk through, this is what we're doing for our event. This is all the different aspects of it. Can you help us think about the accessibility pieces? Our next step is marketing. Marketing is usually one of our more fun pieces of event planning. It's where there's a lot of creativity. It's where we feel connected to other people because we're using social media. We're getting the word out there. It's very exciting. So across the top, you can see some of the worst mistakes that you can make are no marketing, late marketing, incomplete marketing, or boring marketing, because we all know if it doesn't grab our attention, we're not even going to read it. So you can have all the details on there, but who cares, right? Incomplete marketing is usually the one that most student organizations fall into the trap of. What that means is that you're creating something that's visually exciting and you've announced your event, but you've forgotten to put on there, where is it, when is it, and how do I get involved? Or sometimes it would be something like, we're going to sell something at the event, we're going to sell food, but we didn't tell anybody that, so nobody showed up with money and or their cards or their Venmo ready to go. Late marketing is also a problem. You want to make sure that you're at least hitting that sweet spot of a few days before the event, up to 2 weeks before the event. If you wait until the day of, unless you are intentionally doing a pop-up event, which is a thing and works beautifully for some organizations, but unless that's your intention, doing late marketing is very risky because you risk that people won't see it. And then again, you won't have that intended audience that you were hoping for. One of the things to pay attention to is all the different methods that you have available to you here at Towson. And so you all know these: social media and the TU Today email and Involved and events and all of these great things. The thing is, oftentimes the people who are planning the events only focus on the ways that they look for information. So they say, well, we only need to do social media because that's the only way that I find information. But if this is a campus-wide event, you have to recognize not everyone finds their information the same way. Not everyone is following you, or not everyone is looking at Involved It to you, but some people are. And so if you're doing something major, you want to hit all the methods so that you're widening the net of who is seeing your information. You want to be creative. You definitely want to use your networks and your connections. And that spans out to the members of your organization too. If you're doing something that's for your club, we know that Towson students are most likely to be in more than one student organization. So one easy thing that you can do is within your organization say, hey, can you all share this to the other groups that you're a part of? Or if you're in a class where you have one of those amazing faculty members that lets you make announcements, make the announcement, share it with the people that you have a connection with, and ask others to do the same. And then the last thing is in terms of using the TU branding. So you are absolutely permitted to use the TU brand. So that's the logo and the name. However, there are branding guidelines that are very strict that you need to review carefully and follow. They're at towson.edu/brand. They're super easy to find. They provide you with the files that you need. You can download them right there. If you're ever confused about the language in it or how exactly you use it, reach out to our office. We can walk you through it. But just make sure if you're going to use the TU branding that you do it the right way so that your organization doesn't get in trouble for using it improperly. Okay, here are some other things to consider. So sustainability. How can your event be more green? We have an entire sustainability office on campus who can help you think through small changes that you can make with the plans of your event to make it more sustainable. Collaboration. Who else out here in the university world might benefit from working with you? Is there a shared interest? Is someone else wanting to do something very, very similar? Put your resources together, and then it's going to cost each organization less because you're able to use the same things. Recognition. How are you going to recognize your crew? The people who put in all the work to pull off this amazing event that everyone loved, you need to make sure that they're getting some praise and that they feel valued so that they want to do it again. And then little details go a long way. So when someone comes to an event and there's some little detail, there's something that's surprising or something that's very memorable, they remember that and they will come to your other events, or they'll want to get more information about your organization. What can you do to make your event even more memorable? And again, there's small details. They don't have to be costly. They don't have to be anything that's super time consuming, but it's just putting a little bit more thought into your event planning. And then finally, are you representing to you and your organization well? So with everything that we do, not just events, but how we portray ourselves out into the community, our work when we're simply tabling at an event, whatever we're communicating outward, we want to make sure that we're representing our organization well. People take pride in the organizations that they belong to, as they should, and pride in Towson University. So you want to make sure that you're upholding that and you're giving everyone something to be proud of. Okay, so now we've done all of this planning. It's an amazing event. We're there. Things can still go wrong, right? We've all been to an event where things just did not go well. So this is a list of best practices for during the actual event. So first of all, stay organized. Don't let your space get messy with boxes all over the place and stuff all over the place, because inevitably you won't be able to find the thing that you need. And so stay organized with all of your stuff as well. Don't lose the money bag again. Communicate well, that's internally and externally. By communicating well, it doesn't just mean thorough and accurate, but also think about tone. Think about, are you communicating in such a way that is helping people to feel excited, happy, joyful that they're at your program, versus, yelling at someone because they took too much food out of the food line. Have fun, be positive, respect the facility, and leave it better than when you arrived. So definitely, we do have cleaning services, of course, but if you make a giant mess in a room, it goes a long way for the reputation of your organization for you to pick up that mess and for you to make sure that you don't leave the room all askew. So leave it better than when you arrived. When it comes to giving feedback to your crew, praise work that's done well publicly. So it doesn't have to be a big spectacle, but say thank you. If it's an event where there's a microphone, take a second to say thank you to all the people who helped out. If there's correction that needs to be given, do that privately. So pull a person to the side if there's something happening in the moment that you need to correct, and just give it to them quietly instead of in front of a group of people. And then make sure that you're gathering feedback from the people that show up, from your attendees. That way you can find out maybe things that didn't go well that you didn't recognize, or the things that were amazing that you can give some great praise on. One of the biggest things is, though, make sure that everyone who's working the event is actually having a good time. Because as it says, if everyone working an event is miserable, do you even want to stay? You want to check the vibe of the room. Check on your committee members. If you are the chair of the event, that's a big part of your job that night. It's not just making sure that the event is running off smoothly. It's making sure that your committee is okay. Did they get a break? Are they hungry? Do they need some help with the task that they've been assigned? How is it going for them? And are they having a good time working the event? When you have a successful event that everyone was happy, whether they were working or attending, it's going to make you want to do more, and it's going to make your organization members want to be a part of more things. Okay, and then after the event, we would all love when an event ends to just go to sleep and call it done and be like, yay, it's over, we did it. But there are a few things that you have to do. Obviously, you need to pay your bills. If you have any leftover that weren't processed prior to, you got to get those paid. Send thank yous to the appropriate people. So whether you have sponsors, donors, if you have volunteers, if you want to send a thank you to your committee members, send it in the method that makes sense. If it's a quick text, if it's a group message, if it's a handwritten thank you, do whatever makes sense, but make sure you say thank you. Review and assess how the event went. Did you accomplish those goals? So go all the way back to the original 4 things. How did you do? Did you do something that was beneficial to those who attended and those who helped out? Did it meet what you were hoping to do in the first place? If it was a fundraiser, did you raise money? If it was building community, did you build community? And then make notes for the next time. So oftentimes we learn lessons when we do an event. We find out what works and what doesn't work. And it's completely okay when something does not work, but you need to write it down so that the next rotation around, when it's someone else's job to run that event, they know, hey, we learned this last time, maybe do things differently next time. And then finally, report back to your organization. Make sure that you close the loop of when we started talking about having an event and we decided we were going to do something, all the way through the process, you have the event, have one more meeting at the end, or report back to the organization afterwards at the next org meeting so that everyone knows how it ended and what you learned and how you did. Okay. So we are at 3:44. We have 6 minutes to do a deep dive into contracts. So this is one of the things that our office can assist you with in terms of knowing how to do this. But this is a very important piece of information. So for everyone who is holding events on campus, what you need to understand is that there is a TU entertainment contract that is used anytime that you are bringing someone onto campus who is providing a service for your events and you are paying them. So if they are not being paid, if they are a volunteer, then you don't have to worry about this. But if you are trying to pay them, you have to complete this process. The contracts must be completed before the event. They require being processed by the university and getting approval signatures. We recommend no sooner than 2 weeks before the event. So 2 weeks out, it would be better if it was 3 to 4 weeks out before the event, you get your contracts in. So where you find the information, there is a link and there is a how-to guide available on the facility planning pages on towson.edu. There's a link right here to it. I do want to alert you that, of course, today the link broke, but I'm going to show you where else you can get it really quickly. So what I have to do is just switch over. So pardon that. And then let me share this one. Okay. Again, would love some thumbs up to tell me, can you all see Involved It to You? Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so when you go to Involved It to You, scroll all the way down to here where it says campus links. And then in this list right here says entertainment contract. When you click on that, as long as you are logged in first to Involved It to You, so log in, when you click it, it's going to open up a PDF for you. So that's the quickest way. Now this link on the facilities pages does the exact same thing, takes you to the same place. But let me switch again. And what we are looking at is, okay, so now you should be seeing Towson University contract at the top. This is what it actually looks like. So this is a fillable PDF where you are going to enter the information of the vendor that you are using and what they are providing for you and the details of the event. Again, there is a how-to guide that takes you step by step by step of how to fill this out. It is available on Involved It to You on the student activities page under documents. It is also available in a link on towson.edu in the facilities section under planning events. There's a whole list of links there. And again, if you are in this process, you are happy to reach out and I can send you that link directly, but it will tell you exactly what to put in each box. One of the things that we want to make sure that you know, and I'm going to switch back over to my PowerPoint for this, is that signing contracts is not something, that a student can do on their own. A student cannot sign a contract. What you are is the contact person, but what you do is you fill out the form. And again, the how-to guide tells you exactly what to do, but you don't sign the bottom of it. When you submit the form, you're going to submit it to Vicky and SGA, and it's going to be signed based on the amount that the contract is for, so how much it's costing, but it'll come over to people here in my office. And so it'll go, depending on the amount, it will go through our processes over here for official signatures. What that does is it puts us in contract with that person and it guarantees them payment. If you do not do a contract for a vendor, so this would be, for example, a DJ, a musician, someone who's providing, let's say, hair and makeup services for a fashion show, styling, anyone like that that is providing a service that you're going to need to pay. If you do not do the contract before the event, they will not get paid. We do not have a way to pay them if a contract is not in place. And so this is something that you need to take very seriously. That is our last slide. Again, I know we moved super fast. Here is my contact information. We have, oh, of course I clicked the wrong thing. Sorry about that. We have just 2 minutes left. And so I would love at this point in time to know if you have any questions, if there's anything specific I can answer for you before you all log off and head over to the closing. And you're welcome to just unmute yourself or type it in the chat. Either way works. You're very welcome. If you have no questions, you're welcome to log off. Thank you very much for joining me. Again, I'm in the Office of Student Activities. You're welcome to just come say hi sometimes. I would love to meet you in person. And we can gladly give you some assistance and some coaching when you get into your event planning. Thank you all. So very nice. Have a great day. I'm going to stay on until you all log off just to make sure there's no lingering questions. Kinsey, you do not have to sign in for the session if you already put your name in the chat, name and student organization. Yes, you absolutely can email me questions. My email is right here on the screen. It's just K Carpenter. Send me a list. I'll gladly send you some info back. And yes, Mariah, you go back to the main session for the closing. Yes, same. I believe it's the exact same link. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So Grace, Laura, do you have questions?
Yeah, I had a specific question. My group struggled a lot. I'm with YDSA.
Okay.
We hosted a fairly big like panel event this past fall, and we're planning on hosting another one this spring. And we struggled a lot with getting like outside speakers and like honorariums and figuring all that out.
Okay.
And part of the struggle was that we were hosting with the anthropology department, and
Yeah.
there was just questions on like grouping that funding, and then
Yes.
like who is paying for what, and then if like they're on the forms or we on the forms. And I was getting so anxious because I was reading all this stuff on the website, and I was like, we need to be like 5 weeks, you know, these forms need to be 5 weeks ahead of time, and we're 3 weeks. Like, it was just kind of like,
Yes.
I know that we're not following this by the book, and it was like really stressing me out. And honestly, most of my stress was because people weren't communicating with me that
Yep.
they had already done things.
Yeah, I would say
I
so.
was just wondering if you have like insight about like when you're hosting with like someone else who might have more control around that.
Absolutely. So it does get very tricky, especially when you're working with an academic department. It's because, just to give you some context, it's because the funding source comes from a different place. And so the way that money is spent here at Towson, the process in which we spend it changes based on the funding source. The forms are different. What you even can and can't do is a little bit different. So when you're working with an academic department, especially, or really any campus department, my recommendation is to start off the planning process, having a conversation very early on of what are you paying for and what are we paying for, and trying really hard not to split any single expense. So for example, if you're bringing in speakers and you want those speakers to receive an honorarium. That is something that an academic department can do that a student organization cannot do. We have to use this entertainment contract. So what you could negotiate is that if they will pay for the honorarium, you all will pay for the ECS charges. And then that way it just becomes a little bit clearer, and it's not like, well, half and half. And then how do we pay half and half? How do we get you the money? It's not unique to Towson. I can tell you that. I've worked at 5 institutions. They all struggle with it, but Towson really struggles with it. It is very tricky to get funding from one source to another here. So honestly, that's the biggest advice I can give you is start early talking about money and make it really clear, like, what will you pay for? What will we pay for? So that then you can say, okay, it's on you to do this and we're going to take care of. Like the easy things for student orgs to pay for would be ECS charges, food, if you're going to have food, because you could either go through Black and Gold Catering, or if it's under 250, you could just do like a snack run to Target. So you could do some of those more logistic expenses. The marketing, you could pay for the flyers to be printed. You could pay for a boosted post or something like that. And then let them do the tricky part of paying the speakers. That's my advice. You're absolutely right, though. 9 times out of 10, the hardest part is that people don't communicate to you, and then you run out of time.
Like I had no idea that part of it was because like I had found this speaker, and then I felt like I was in charge of like communicating with him back and forth about like the honorarium stuff, but then I was never told that someone else had been emailing with him. Of course, I was never CC'd on anything, so it was just like, so then I'm like, want it to be in their court. It's like, you know, you think the professors are going to be more on top of things, but they're almost like less on top of things.
Right. Not all of them, but for the majority.
Exactly. So it's just like, as students, like, you know, we're like finding the speakers and taking initiative, but then at the same time, it's like we have to be like, okay, but can you pay them?
Yes, it is. It is a little bit easier when it's, let's say, 2 student organizations going together, because it's the same process and you're working with Miss Vicky. And so splitting costs that way is a little bit easier. But honestly, even in that situation, it's it's still very confusing about who's doing what. So figuring out like, you're going to pay for this and we're going to pay for that, and splitting it that way just keeps everything a little bit simpler.
Okay, that was another question I had too, because for our panel event this spring, our advisor was like, you should collab with this group, and this group too. And it's like, but as far as the honorarium, like that still needs to come from a educational department.
It doesn't. So what changes is that instead of an honorarium, you do the entertainment contract that I just showed you. So you can still pay someone to come be a speaker. It's just called something different. And I will be honest with you, faculty will have no idea what you're talking about. They have no knowledge of this entertainment contract because they do honorariums. They will continue to use that word honorariums, and you just have to do the translation of, we're doing a contract. It's a speaker's contract. You can still pay them. It doesn't change how much you pay them. Like, that's still entirely up to you. You can negotiate that with the speaker, but it's just a different process of paperwork.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, great. And again, you know, I offer our services up as an office. When you get into it this semester, if you're struggling again and you just need some clarification, like, please feel free to stop by or reach out. However you can, you know, email, you can call the office, you can stop by, whatever works for you. But we're happy to help. I'm even happy to help faculty understand the process. I've done that a few times, stepped in.
That'd be great too.
Just provided some translation just to help things make a little sense for them. Because sometimes they need that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, well, go enjoy your final session. And if you have any other follow-up questions, just let me know.
All righty.
Great. And Laura, I don't know if you are still there, if you had questions, but we're over time, so I'm gonna go. All right, thanks everyone.